Hey guys, it's been a while. I haven't caught up with you. It's been especially a while for me because I usually post something every couple of weeks or so, and I haven't done anything in, let's just see, a month and a half, 2 months, somewhere around that area. The last thing you guys saw was a Rally Kings run that I went on, which was super cool. Every guy in there and female that was in there, guy, woman, whatever, in there was totally awesome. Really nice to meet people with $300,000 cars. Down to $50,000, $60,000 cars, just cool. Everybody was great. But getting back to at hand, I want to let you guys know what I've been up to lately. The Porsche's had some issues, not major issues, just nagging little small things. The slave cylinder went. I tried to replace it with a certified used part. Didn't get shipped, a good quality part, got it reshipped. The shipper from eBay was a really nice guy, but it just didn't work out. I ended up getting a rebuild kit. And that was like 18 or 20 bucks. Should have done that in the long run. And then I had cooling issues. And also, if I turn around, it's no longer silver. It's white now. And so I also did a little bit of plastic dipping. But this video in particular is just going to really show you some good tidbits on how to actually replace with the kit the slave cylinder, some of the do's and don'ts, some of what actually happens and freezes up, to clear any confusion or any hesitation to actually do the kit itself, because again, it's super cheap and it's been holding up for a couple months now. So stay tuned, we'll get started. All right. So really quickly, here's a very, very beautiful thing. This is finally sitting in the right area. After time and time again of bleeding the system, it would raise up, the fans would kick in too high. I'll go into a little bit more explanation later. Also, just an update. Got a dash cover finally, so it looks a little bit more legit, and the interior is just getting cleaned up a little bit better. So, yeah, I'll take you around a quick tour of the outside of the car. So you may have noticed when the car was running, the idle is a little high. It's about 200 RPMs above where I would actually like it. That's okay. So basically, I've been working on this cooling system. I mean, it was one thing after another. As a quick update, I went through the thermostat. Thermostat went. Replaced the thermostat. Thought I was all good, but I forgot that stupid C-clip that sits in there that fastens it up. And so the system wasn't running back really good, so I had to take the whole thing apart all over again, put the clip in there. Then after I did that, I didn't seat the lower end hose in all the way correctly, and believe it or not, the radiator fan caught on the lower radiator hose and it sliced through it. All my coolant went out. Now, what's really interesting about the 944, if you guys done any reading in particular, is that the bleeding system can be cumbersome. There's a bleed valve, a 12mm bolt that sits at the top of the upper radiator hose that you open up. You first fill the system through the expansion tank. You fill it to the point that as you unscrew that screw, that the fluid starts to flow out of it. And then from that point, you close it down finger tight. You start the car up. Some people raise the car up about 1 foot to 2 feet in the air, about 1.5 feet, something like that. And then you start the car up, turn it all the way on high heat, and you let the system kind of bleed all the air out the system, especially when a lot of fluid leaks out. So I had to do that once when I first replaced the thermostat. I had to do it again when I figured out I was missing the clip and installed that. I had to do it again when I actually tore through the lower end radiator hose, and then after all that, the upper radiator hose went. So I was in the coolant up to my knees. I was so tired of dealing with fluid. It was crazy. And I'm sorry I didn't really record a video because it just seemed like such a simple process to do, but I was in it and I was over it, really. That was one of the things, but I have recently resolved the issue after doing another bleed. So notice, a lot of places will tell you to bleed, but you have to do it multiple times. So that means let the car fill it up, let the car get cold, let it warm up, get hot, bleed it, drive it around, bring it back home, repeat the process 2 to 3 times. On my 3rd attempt, finally, the needle stays down, The fans kick on properly. The air is out of the system. It was something. And also, just a tidbit of information you guys want to pay attention to. You know where it says to turn up that heater all the way up? Make sure there is a heater valve, a control valve, on your firewall. Make sure those hoses are on there properly and that you're getting high heat. If you're not, you're going to run into an issue. So just you'll turn it all the way up. The heat won't expound properly. The fluid won't flush out of the heater unit, the heater core, and it won't work properly. So another thing I mentioned before, and I'll say it again. So the video that you're about to watch is a video of the slave cylinder. Okay, slave cylinder. I was covered in two fluids: coolant and braking fluid. Why? Because I try to go one route and fixing the slave cylinder. So with this channel, you know it's FC Imports. It stands for Fun Cheap Imports. I try to get things as cheaply as possible in a reasonable manner. I decided to go with a certified part from an eBay dealer. And when the part got there, for one thing, the piston inside the slave cylinder was frozen, so it wasn't moving. So then I tried to just take the gasket, the used gasket, off that cylinder, put it on my cylinder, place it and fix it. That worked for a couple of days. Boom, it went out again. So in the meantime, I had explained to the guy that that part didn't work, and he shipped me another one. When I got the next one, and of course this is some days later, that one, the gasket itself was already destroyed. I talked to him. He said he would send me another one. Really nice guy. Just things didn't work out. I ended up ordering a kit. Now, I was a little afraid of the kit because I said, well, what if I don't do this kit correctly? You have a retainer clip that you have to put on there properly. If it's not there, all the fluid's going to leak out. I had all this apprehension. It cost $18 for this kit. I ordered it because I was tired of dealing with the used parts, and I didn't want to pay the, what, $90 or so for a new slave cylinder. Again, trying to be as frugal as possible. I got the kit. Not very hard to install. This video is going to show it. Pay attention. All right. Okay, so what we have here on my very nice table box in 2x4 here is two separate slave cylinders. Okay, these were the slave cylinders that I purchased. I actually only purchased one of them, and then he sent me a second one, but neither one of them work. Why? Well, this one here that was sent, while it's already partly dismantled, the cylinder inside of it, which I'll show you shortly, would not move at all. And that caused a problem because, of course, this cylinder inside of here is supposed to be able to move back and forth when you, when the fluid, the pressure builds. It's supposed to push this lever out into the fork that actually puts pressure and disconnects the clutch, or it allows it to actually allows you to shift gears without having problems. Now this unit, what's wrong with this unit? See, this unit right here, if you can see, this was the second one that was sent to me, but you can see right there those crack marks. So after I talked to the individual from eBay, he had basically said he apologized profusely and said that he had someone pull it and they didn't check it. So this one was just a no-go right out the bat because the seal is already in pretty bad condition. So these are the two. Let's go through a little bit more in depth. Look at everything. So back here is your bleed screw. That's what you're going to actually attach a clear line to and open it up, and you'll put the other side of the line into something that contains some actual braking fluid. Because remember, this is a hydraulic clutch that's linked to your braking system, and it's going to flush out bubbles as you continue to press it and build pressure. Okay, this one, of course, doesn't have it right now. This top piece is where the line comes in for your system. So it comes in, it comes down with the braking fluid, puts it in here. That's pretty self-explanatory. So here is a retaining, this is the retainer that keeps this boot in place. I just took like a flathead screwdriver and very lightly tapped on the end of it, and it seats this this gasket here back into place, and it keeps it in place. Okay. So if we take this apart, if you were to remove this, you take it apart and you have the back end of this gasket, which this gasket wants to be all intact, and you take this part off, and it has a groove in it that holds this piece together here. And so as the fluid builds, it's actually going to press on, I don't know if I can get a good picture, there's a cylinder in there. And so that cylinder comes forward, so you can see that lip there. The cylinder comes forward, and as it comes forward, it pushes it back into this, which operates, it pushes in that clutch, the fork actually for the clutch. So this is a very, very simple thing to do. When you rebuild the system, you're going to get your gasket here for this. You can get your retainer clip, and you're going to get a new also retainer here to put that on. And you want to do all that at once. You know, this is less likely to fail than this back here. So you want to just go ahead and replace the whole thing. Again, that's an $18 charge for those. The biggest thing is when you replace it, I forgot something. It also comes with another gasket. Unfortunately, I had the whole video of doing this, and my note, there was an update that came on my phone, and it blew my phone to smithereens. It just does not work anymore, and I lost the video for it. But you'll actually, when this functions properly, it actually springs up to this edge right here. And you can just take a flathead screwdriver around and gently nudge it out because it's on a spring. So behind here is a spring, okay? Behind, at the back of that is a spring, and there's fluid that pushes it. So on a normal operating, so when yours goes, it's going to still move back and forth, okay? You just press it till it opens up some. It's going to come right around this lip. You can kind of just take a flathead screwdriver and kind of nudge it both ways, and it'll pop out because it's on the spring. Now this is going to be, I can't take this out because it's frozen, and this one unfortunately is frozen too. So I'm really saying don't buy these used, even though it's kind of tempting, you know. Don't buy a new one because this rebuild kit is really easy. But when you pop this out, there's going to be around that cylinder. So this is a cylinder. There's going to be another rubber gasket that sits on. It's going to have a lip. Pay attention to the orientation of that lip, because that lip is what seals the fluid here and pushes that back and forth. You're going to take that old lip off because the kit's going to come with that lip also, and you're going to put it on. Again, I apologize to you guys that I don't have the video for this, but I'm just breaking this down a little bit more for you to see it. That the kit comes with this piece here to retain this back into here. It comes with this piece, this new piece, and that lip. It's very simple to get that out. And I would make sure that if you're doing this job, another important point, when it does not have braking fluid in it at all, this cylinder will seize up. So take the, you know, as it's leaking, if you're going to do the job, do it all at once. You know, take the nut off. I think it's a 10 millimeter nut. Take that off, get it out the system, and replace everything at once. That cylinder will have lubrication around it. It'll pop out. It's on a spring. You just put your finger here like that, and it'll come out just fine. All right. I hope I explained that simply. Do not be afraid of this. Once you do it once, you'll save yourself somewhere in the realms of $70, even doing it yourself if it happens again, and it's really easy. So next up is the cooling system. Yes, I'm putting two videos together at once. Why? Because I don't want to stretch it out too much, and I'll include the description in my video so you know you can tackle both jobs if it comes available. These are two unrelated issues, but this is the update. This is what I'm finding. The cooling system. This seems like a very easy thing to do. Most cars I've bled before, you don't have to bleed the cooling system. You fill up the reservoir or you fill up the radiator directly and you're good to go. But this doesn't happen in the Porsche 944, especially if you allow too much fluid to go out. So, number one, if you're ever, this is really important, especially for guys that don't work on these a lot, and sorry for how dirty my engine is, but if you are ever going to add fluid to this system, wait and make sure the car is completely cold before opening that cap. Why do I say that? Because if the car is warm and you open this right here, slightly warm, it can be not hot, midway between half, whatever, and you open this here, you're going to hear a sucking sound, and the fluid is going to increase here. What you've just done is you've added air into your system. So air is not good in your cooling system because what it does is it gives you airlock, where fluid isn't always traveling quickly throughout the system or being run by the water pump. And so certain parts of your engine, heater core, blah, 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 will get this airlock and your engine will get overly hot. It's not getting to your temperature sensor in your radiator and it's not kicking on your fans. It's causing a problem. Fluid is not freely flowing throughout your engine. So you do not want to put air into the system. So the process, which has been very well documented on Clark's Garage, 944 online, the rest of the guys, I appreciate you guys for showing that, is to, of course, fill the system up after it's been drained or whatever you have to do. You know, put your plugs back in if you're doing that. But you're actually going to open up this right here. That is your bleed screw. That's a 12 millimeter bleed screw with a hole in it, right? So it has a hole in the bleed screw. And when you do that, you're going to open it up quite a bit so that hole inside the threading is exposed. Then you're going to fill your system up with coolant. Now, I would also say some guys say that they like to raise the car up 1.5 feet or a decent amount of space, maybe a foot. That's also a good idea, and that's what I followed. I don't know if it's completely necessary, but it worked for me. Now, you pour the fluid into your expansion tank here, and you watch, and the fluid is going to eventually trickle out of this area through that hole in the threading. Once that happens, you can go ahead and put your cap on, and you'll actually go and just finger tight close your finger tight close the bleed screw. So it's not all the way closed; it's still a little open. Then from there, you'll actually turn on your car, and I don't have the lighting, but you're going to make sure you turn your heat gauge all the way up high as possible. I would say too, if you're not getting proper heat, also turn on your window defroster here, which is going to cut the heat on all the way. It's going to make sure that your heater valve has your options switched all the way over if that's the case. Then you're going to turn the car on and run it. And you're going to let it run. It's going to run for quite a few minutes. Let it get up to temperature. Let the fans kick on a couple times back and forth. And that is the first step. Now, very important to make sure of. This is something that I found wasn't working on mine. The heater control valve. If that isn't set right, it's not, when you turn that knob inside the car, it's not going to tell the heater core to open or close properly. So what you want to do is you want to pay particular attention. I'm going to try to get in here and show you up against this firewall here, right behind that loop. I'm trying to get it for you guys here. Right in there, you see those two vacuum lines? That's your heater control valve. Mine was disconnected, which meant that even though I turned my heat controller up in the car, that didn't operate this actual switch here, this actual vacuum right here. I'll try to show you again. Sorry for the blinding. That vacuum right there with a lever. You see that lever, that little orange lever right there? And so I didn't actually have the car where the heater core was open and allowing the system to flush. That's very important. Pay attention to that. Pay attention to that. I say that, just make sure it's all good. But after, if that's fine and everything's good, it's going to heat up, your car's going to get hot, it may not function exactly well, you're going to go ahead and what you're going to see is during the process of it heating up, you're going to see bubbles popping out of here. And that bubbles are a good thing because that means it's getting rid of air. Once you get rid of that air and you get all those bubbles and gone, go ahead and tighten this thing down, drive the car, drive it around, it still may run a little hot, come back home, turn the car off. Some of the fluid from here may dissipate down or may go down in the system. That's fine. Wait till the car is cold before opening up this cap again and repeat the process. Do it 2 or 3 times. It's very frustrating. It's going to get hot. You're going to say, why am I doing this? But by the 3rd or 4th time of you doing it, if you just do it in that order correctly, you're going to be all set to go. So I just want to go over this because, you know, I would do it once, twice. I would actually accidentally open this up too quickly. Air would get reintroduced into the system. Also, another pointer, make sure that your clamps and your hoses, I have 2 new ones as I told you before, 2 new hoses, the upper and lower radiator hose, are, everything is sealed tight. You don't have any air coming out because air, remember, this is a system that is pushing fluid. Air introduced is only going to cause that system to slow down and operate properly. Okay, so that is just on paper or on video how to do the system. Again, that is from documentation from known guys that have done it the right way. Cool. So next up on my list of things to do, seats, seat covers. These seats need to have new covers put on them, and you know, I don't want to go El Cheapo on the process, but that's one thing in particular that I want to do next to get the car cleaned up. Mechanically, everything else is looking pretty decent. You know, the oil, I'm not doing an oil change right now because I checked the oil. The oil is like super clean. It's in really good condition. The levels are really great in the car, and that's totally cool. You know, and then just continue to drive it, make sure it's reliable. Heating issues over, thank God. Everything else in the car seems to be working well. I'm going to go ahead and replace a couple of belts, not the timing belt or the balance shaft belt because I already replaced those, but the power steering belt and the alternator belt, those actually look to be just about original. And so we're going to go ahead and do that. And also I am ordering my odometer gear. I'm hoping to find an odometer gear that I can put on, because I've taken the whole system apart. I saw where the odometer gear disintegrated. If I can get the gear itself, it'll be awesome instead of having to replace the whole system, because I don't want to worry about changing, you know, getting a car. This one says 55 and it's relatively close per the documentation. I don't want to go through a process of, you know, having a cluster that says 125,000 miles, because that's not exactly accurate for this vehicle. So those are things upcoming. Again, thanks you guys for watching. I hope you guys stay tuned. And if you have any questions or you're looking for any other information on the car that I could provide, let me know in the description. Take care.